I'm not even going to waste any time. I'm going to say it right here from the top. Gojo is freaking back, but it's in a way that will literally blow your freaking mind. Like, I'm literally still in shock from reading this chapter. I had to take a minute before I came here to record this. I just could not believe what Gege decided to do here. He is one wicked man. I'm just going to say that right now. But enough of me just glazing this chapter. Let's get right into the actual spoilers. So the chapter begins with Yuji deciding that he's going to crush Sukuna's heart. If you guys remember at the end of the previous chapter, it ended with Yuji going straight berserk and like tearing away at Sukuna's chest. And don't get me wrong, that was super cool and all. Love to see the MC getting his, especially after taking so many L's and losing so many friends. But let's be real here, the real excitement at the end of that chapter was when we saw this shadowy figure appear in the distance. A figure that was very, very heavily implied to be Gojo. Well, we're wasting no time in finding out in this chapter, because just as Sukuna is about to use his domain expansion, he sees Gojo standing and is in disbelief. Sukuna wonders if it's really him, but pushes away that thought as he says that it's impossible. But as he's saying this, the man is appearing right here in the flesh. But again, it is not in the way you think, because in the next few pages, Sukuna suddenly realizes who it is, and punches away Yuji as he moves forward and says, "I apologize for underestimating you. I didn't know you were capable of going that far, Yuta Okotsu." Sukuna addresses Gojo as Yuta. I'm sure your jaw is on the floor right now. Mine definitely was when I first read this part. So just by putting two and two together here, before you read anything else, what must have happened is that Yuta copied Kenjaku's curse technique, which would make sense because he's the one that took him out and had his body. And once he copied Kenny's technique, he used it to transfer into Gojo's body. It's one of those things that like just seems so obvious, or just like really seemed like the most practical thing to do. It was staring us right in the face. The fact that Okotsu was the one that took out Kenjaku, the fact that we haven't gotten a direct answer as to how the copying ability works, but as far as I can remember, in this chapter it's being confirmed that Rika needs to consume a piece of a sorcerer in order for Yuta to copy that ability. So after he took out Kenny, Rika ate his body, and boom, here we are. But before we get into the action, we hit a flashback. In the flashback, Yuta decides to have Rika devour Kenjaku and copy his curse technique, which will let Yuta change bodies. Kusakabe says, "Can't we just copy Limitless from Gojo's body?" Shoko says, "You can't use Limitless without the 6 eyes." And Kusakabe responds by saying, "Then just copy the 6 eyes." And Shoko shuts that down by saying that the 6 eyes are a part of his physical body. It's not a curse technique, so he can't copy it. Maki asks, since Yuta can copy curse techniques for only 5 minutes, what would happen after those 5 minutes? And Yuta says he doesn't know. Now that's a detail that I definitely didn't think about until Maki brought it up right here. I forgot that there's that little stipulation to Yuta's copy technique. And I don't know about you guys, but just like the way that Gege writes JJK, like having the good guys suffer so much to the point that it like makes you want to puke. I have a feeling this is setting up a really like devastating moment where Okotsu's 5-minute timer runs out and like his head explodes or something, or he just drops dead. I don't know. I hope that's not the case, but this whole thing just gives me a whole bad vibe. I don't know. Let's move on though. Well, Mei explains the pros and cons of Yuta copying Kenjaku's technique. There's a possibility that after switching bodies, Yuta might automatically lose his curse technique and would have to forever live in Gojo's body. She lists out 3 specific scenarios, but the translations on them are kind of weird, so I'm probably just going to wait until the official chapter comes out to review it and go into more detail later. So, subscribe for that, but moving on. Yuta says he knows that this is the last resort. He's first going to try fighting Sukuna with his own domain, and if he can't win, he'll accept Gojo's body. Kusakabe says it's a good plan, but it's just not humane. Yuta says, "What do you mean humane? We're about to fight history's strongest jujitsu sorcerer. If we can win this just by throwing away our humanity, we shouldn't even be arguing about this." I'm not gonna lie, I absolutely love this moment from Yuta. Like, it's crazy how much he's changed from JJK 0. This dude is thinking pragmatically. He's literally willing to have his own brain implanted into his master's body. He's agreeing to do it without blinking twice. And like Kusakabe says, yeah, it seems like a pretty inhumane thing to do, but like it's either that or they all die. So I mean, the decision kind of makes itself. Yuta asks if everyone's afraid of him becoming a monster to fight Sukuna, but Maki says that everyone's just concerned about him. But then Yuta yells, "What about Gojo? Is he not important? Haven't we been pushing all this burden of becoming a monster onto Gojo alone? If Gojo is gone, then who else will be that quote-unquote monster? If no one intends to become one, then I will." And that's an interesting way of reasoning with all of this, but I can kind of see where Yuta's coming from. But the flashback continues. Gojo says Yuta might have been born under better circumstances than him. So Gojo says if Yuta can't utilize that advantage, he's totally lame. Let's start off with your sloppy cursed energy. I've always told you to be careful about that. So this part here is flashing even further back, precisely to the moment where Gojo and Yuta are talking about this whole plan. Like Gojo knew from the very beginning that this might happen. Well, Gojo then asks if his students can go away because he doesn't want them to see his bloody side, especially since he doesn't know what he's about to do is right. So after Gojo says this, he opens a door and Gakuganji's on the other side. So what I'm taking from this is that this is just before Gojo took out the higher ups. Like this is what he's talking about, his bloody side. And just before he walks in the door, Gojo once again tells his students to go back, but they refute him. Yuta tells Gojo not to try to become a monster by himself again, and Gojo responds with, "That's something I can't do. At that moment, I was left behind. I have to catch up to him." Now, some of you more intellectual readers might have took something differently from this, but to me, this is Gojo saying, like, pretty much that he should have took out Suguru Geto at that moment, like, pretty much the last time he saw him before JJK 0. Because if he had done that, then none of this would have probably happened. If he had, quote, been a monster in that moment and killed his friend, and potentially some civilians, he could have saved everyone. And when he says, "I have to catch up to him," then that's him pretty much, like, saying that, yeah, Geto turned into a monster to follow his goals to the fullest of his abilities, which is pretty much the last thing that he said to Gojo. So this is Gojo trying to do the same. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments below though. Well, after this, the scene switches to Amai. This was Yuji's friend that we saw in the Culling game, and he's explaining his curse technique. He can amplify the sugar within himself and output it in some kind of way. Shoko puts Amai on their medical team, so he can use his curse technique to help supply sugar to the brain, which is a very, very creative way to make use out of a seemingly useless technique. I thought that was pretty cool. And we get to see the moment that Yuta gets teleported back to where they are. And of course, the last time we saw him, he was heavily wounded by Sukuna, and the damage is very clearly shown right there. Like, he is bleeding profusely, and Arata is there to stop the bleeding. That way Yuta doesn't die while they're transferring his brain. And I'm not gonna lie, I would have liked to have seen like the whole brain transfer, like how it actually happens, but I guess that's too rated R for a shonen. So we just skip to Sukuna and Gojo both opening their domains at the exact same time. I just realized I said Gojo there, I really mean Yuta, but you know, you guys get what I'm saying here. Yuta is Gojo, Gojo is Yuta, and him/they are about to take on Sukuna, a dude in another guy's body versus someone who absorbed their own twin in the womb. Again, like I said at the top of the video, Gege is a wicked, wicked man. But that is it for this one. I'm probably going to go into much more detail in this chapter in a different video. So for now, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. What do you think about these spoilers? Do you like the direction things are going, like the way that Gojo came back, quote unquote? Let me know your thoughts. Have an absolutely wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, whatever. And I'll see you guys in the next video.